Audio Jungle.
Hello everyone, my name is Suprayogi and I will be the lecturer for the course of Introductions to General Linguistics. Introduction to General Linguistics. What is it about? Alright, so this is basically the course that tell you about basic principles of language and the science of the language. So today, in these occasions, I will tell about the basic principles of the language itself. That is the definitions of a language, features of language, and the functions of a language. Let's discuss this one by one. When we talk about language, you may think that yes, it is a means of communications. Yes, it is about the sentence that we produced. Yes, it is interactions between two or more people using certain symbols. You may say that it is the correct definitions, but let's see further how linguists try to propose another comprehensive definitions about the language. Sapir in 1921 proposed the definition of the language, that language is purely human and non-instinctive methods of communicating ideas, emotions, desires, as well as by means of voluntary produced symbols. So Sapir argues that when we talk about language, it will be related to the communications and also symbols. Other than that, Finocchiaro in 1965 also proposed another definitions of language, that language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols which permits all people in a given cultures or community or other people who have learned the systems of that culture to communicate and also to interact. So Finocchiaro's definitions focuses on language is actually arbitrary vocal symbols for certain communities. Other definitions of language is proposed by Pei in 1966, that language is a system of communications by sounds operating through speech organs among members of a given community and using symbols possessing arbitrary conventional meaning. So the meaning is conventional or understood by many kinds of people. Right, let's take a look at further definitions about the language. Okay, from the three definitions, we can conclude that language is correlated to the symbols, correlated to the vocal organs, and it's correlated to particular communities. Thus, Wardau in 1972 proposed a more generally accepted definition that language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols used for human communications. So there are several terms here: systems, vocal symbols, and human communications. So in this context, I talk a lot about arbitrary. What is that? Language is arbitrary in the sense that there is no correlations or intrinsic connections between certain word and the thing that we refer to it. For example, I have the word man, but it doesn't have any correlations with the things that I refer. So in naming something, there is no correlation why this is called pen, why this is called pencil. That's called arbitrariness. And the next one is that language is like a system. Its elements of language constitutes rules. So there are a lot of rules inside of language and it is combined. So that's why we call it as a system. And the third one, when we say that it's for human communications, because it serves communications purposes. Furthermore, this also explains that the symbolic natures of language, that words are just symbols and they are associated with objects, actions, ideas, and etc., but by convention. So the meanings of this is based on the conventions, what are agreed by society or certain community. The next one is that language is vocal because the primary medium is sound for all languages, no matter how well developed the writing systems are. So in this context, all evidence points to the fact that the writing symbols or systems came into being much later than the spoken form. So actually in our world, that language or spoken language coming earlier than the written language, and then that they are only attempts to capture sounds and meaning on paper. Okay, so that's actually the basic concepts of language means vocal. Alright, the second discussion is about the natures of language. So in this context, language has certain natures that are consist of systematics, arbitrary, duality, creativity, displacements, and also cultural transmissions. So let's discuss this one by one. Systematics. In this context, when we think of language as made of sounds, we soon find out that only certain sounds occur in one language, and this occur in certain regularity. So in this context, you can see the example here, flying. The compositions of the letter are F, L, Y, I, N, G. It is impossible when we create a meaning when it consists of other structures. For example, L comes first and then F come later, Y come later, and then I and G. Or N come first, G come later, and then L come later, F come later, and Y come later. And another examples, we can make the additional words, the new words from the word pay, from pay into payment, but it is not applicable for other words. For example, when I give you the word slow plus men becomes slowmans, it cannot be renewed by using that systems. So systematic here means that there are certain rules when you can apply certain changes in the language or the patterns. Second of all is arbitrariness that I've told you earlier, that this feature was proposed by Saussure, that the forms of linguistic science bear no natural, logical, intrinsic relationship to the meaning itself. So for example, I have the word tree. In Indonesia means pohon, but there is no correlation why that thing is called as tree or pohon. So different sounds are used to refer to same object in a different language, for example. Alright, the next feature is duality. So in this context, language is organized into the level of layers simultaneously. In this context, there is a subsystems of a meaningful units and subsystems of sounds which has no meaning. For example, we have the systems of sounds, book, like something that we read or the medium that we can write. Book in this context consists of three different sounds, B, U, and K. In this context, duality means the first one, when there is a layer or level when those combinations of sounds can be understood, but also there are another layer when it has, let's say, three distinctive sounds when it has no meaning. So it called duality. The next feature is creativity. So in this context, language can be used to send a message we have never said or ever heard before. So it transfers the message and we have certain words to express about it. So creativity here is unique to human language, and language is creative in that it makes possible the constructions of interpretations of new signals by its users. So in this context, creativity can mix further possibilities of language. Words can be used in a new way to mean a new things and can be instantly understood by people who had never ever come across that usage before. For example, the word cool now is not only referring to the situations of the weather that is comfortable for you, but cool is also to show that something is advanced, something is actually fashionable, for example. So that language is resourceful because of its duality and its recursiveness. So in this context, recursive natures of language provides to create an infinite number or endless sentence. So you can, by having certain vocabulary, you can create many sentence or even longer sentence. So limited rules, according to Chomsky in 1958, can produce unlimited sentence. Okay, for example, I have a sentence. He bought a book which is written by a teacher who taught in a school which is known for its graduates. Blah 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 blah. It can be continued, continued, continued. Right? Another features of language is displacement. So in this context, human language enable their users to symbolize objects, events, and also the concept which are not present in the time or space at the moments of communications. Thus, we can refer to Confucius, the North Poles, even though the first has been dead for over 2,550 years, and the second is the situation is far away from us. In this context, we can say about the North Pole, although we have never been there. It's far away from Indonesia. Or we can talk about Confucius, someone who is notably having a great influence in a Chinese cultures and also civilizations. Although it is like, 2 millenniums past from now. So displacement benefits human beings by giving us the power to handle generalizations or abstractions. Something that is abstract, something that is so general, something far away, happen in the past and the futures, we can talk about that. Right, the next one is the cultural transmission. So in this context, cultural transmissions means that it is passed on from one generation to other generations from the language that we carry. In this context, every word in certain community contains cultures. When we lose that word, when that word is, for example, extinct, then we never use that kind of cultures. For example, when we talk about cheese is considered cultures of creating certain foods by fermentations. But later, for example, in the future time, when people never use the word cheese, then people will forget that there is a cultures of cheese, of the products of food that we eat every day. So now let's talk about the language functions. The first one is that according to the Halliday. So Halliday proposed that there are 3 types of the language functions. Number 1 is ideational functions. There is a model of experience as well as logical relations. Number 2 is the interpersonal functions to establish and maintain social relationship. And the last one is textual functions, that is to create the relevance to the context. So now go to another language functions. The first one is informative or referential functions. So in this context, language is used to convey the message, that is to inform somebody of some information. So in this context, one of the features of these functions is the propositions that has true or false value. So it's informative and referential functions. Interpersonal functions of language. In this context, sociologically, language is used to establish and maintain people relationship in society. So it's used for the polite expressions, humble words, expressions of identity, and etc. For example, in English, we have the terms dear sir, dear professor. and then or we can call our peers itu Johnny or Andy, Ruth, and etc. Or refer to ourselves like yours, your obedient servants, that indicates various grades of the interpersonal relations. The next function is performative functions. So in this context, this concept originates from the philosophy study of language represented by Austin and Searle, whose theory now become the backbones in pragmatic study. For example, performative function here is that when there is a sentence, it can change the situations, it can change your condition. For example, I now declare that the meeting open. So by saying this one, the meeting's open, but it depends on who speak this one. Second one is like, I bet you £2 it will rain tomorrow. Another example that you can see is that in a wedding ceremony, especially when you attend it in the church, I pronounce you husband and wife. I pronounce you husband and wife. Important persons say to the bride and grooms, and they become officially married couple. By this, I sentence you 3 years jail, for example. So that's the example how performative functions of language. So it has changed the social status for persons, as in marriage ceremonies, sentence of criminals, and then blessing of the children, naming a ship at a launching ceremony, and cursing the enemies, whether it's and it should be formal and ritualized. Next functions of language is emotive functions. That is to change the emotional status of the audience for or against someone or something, like swear words and the involuntary verbal reactions to the beautiful arts or the bad things, conventional words, and etc. For example, we have the word oh my god, or damn it, or what a sight, oh wow, and etc. That's emotive functions of language. Phatic communion. So in this context, it is also a series of expressions for the social interactions of a language. It's usually small and seemingly meaningless topic to discuss, but it maintains the comfortable relationship without involving any factual content. For example, when someone greet you by saying, "Hey, how are you? How's your conditions?" Actually, that person do not directly ask your condition, but it's just like the opening sentence for a serious discussions. The next one is also when we have this conversations about the weathers. So, how's your trip? Is the weather good? When we ask someone, so having a business trip, for example. So that's actually the starting point or wishy-washy before we start this for the serious conversation. Expressions that usually help define and maintain the interpersonal relations, usually in a form of slang words, jokes, jargons, and ritualistic exchange, switches from the social and regional dialects, and etc. So that's phatic communions of language. Recreational functions. Recreational functions in this context is that the use of language to share a joy of using it, such as babies babbling, and then a chanter's chanting, and then verbal drilling, poetry writing, and etc. Some things that is proposed for the recreational things. Metalingual functions. So metalingual functions of language is that language can be used to talk about itself. For example, in the context of definitions, what is actually camera? Camera is a series of tools to capture moments and record the video. So when we explain something, we need another words. To define one word, we need other words to support it. So that's actually metalingual functions of a language. So language can be used to talk about itself. Other example of the metalingual function is that when we try to define, for example, book. What is book actually? Book is a number of the printed or written sheets of paper and then bound together in a cover. So you need other words, right? Series of words to describe Okay, everyone, so we have already talked about the definitions of language, natures of language, and functions of language. I hope you understand this basis. You can replay the video for further understanding. Okay, see you in another occasion.